there's a lot going on and you can feel it.
Okay, well, let's talk about it.
Were you designed for the life you're living?
Most humans are not doing work that lights them up.
You Do Woo's Allison Cullen breaks down the basics of your spiritual blueprint.
Whenever I do a chart reading for somebody, half the time people cry just out of relief of like being seen, being understood, and also being like, oh my God, I don't have to do this anymore. Like I don't have to like do things in a way that doesn't feel good anymore.
The shifts we are seeing in humanity.
We're switching from human doing to human being.
And the power that comes with embracing your human design.
Once I started actually saying no to anything that wasn't a 100% heck yes, everything started shifting.
On an all-new Intentional Living with Courtney Myers. Welcome to Intentional Living with Courtney Myers, a podcast dedicated to those seeking a more fulfilled and purposeful life through thought-provoking conversation, spiritual exploration, and authentic connections. The intentional movement has begun, and if you found yourself here, you are a part of it. Intentional Living with Courtney Myers starts now. Hi, Allison. Welcome to Intentional Living with Courtney Myers. I am so excited to get to talk to you today, especially now that I know we have like friends in common and stuff. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Courtney. I'm so honored to be on your show, and I'm excited for our chat. We have a lot of things on the docket to talk about.
We have so much to talk about because I feel like you are just so heavily involved with so many things that like just are so fascinating to me and blow my mind, from signs to human design, which is a little bit newer to me. And I think is just, it is so cool. Like the more and more I just look, I get like little tidbits of it and just like, what it blows my mind when I start to learn what human design is and how it like relates to our life. But then even more so today, I was doing my little research before we jumped on our call. And then I heard you talking about like, there's a whole like different new year. There's like a human design new year. So now we have like the new year. We have a Chinese new year. We have a human design new year.
Right.
And so I kind of want to talk about that too, because I think that is fascinating. And then of course, the big thing that I think we've talked a lot about on the show, but I really want to talk about the shift in consciousness, this evolution of the human consciousness that's happening. I know you talk about it a lot, that it started in 2020 and it's taking us to 2027, and really what that means, how we navigate it, and like what is on the other side of it. So a lot of big topics.
Yeah. We can delve into all of them.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So let's start with the new year, because human design has its own new year. Why is that? What is it? What can we expect from it? And let's talk about it.
Yeah. So I'll give like a really quick layman's terms overview of what human design is as well. We're going to get into it, but for anybody who's like, what are we even talking about, before I jump onto the new year thing. So human design is sort of like one of those personality tests that you would take out there. It's like, I always say it's as if the Enneagram and Myers-Briggs had a baby, and there was like a tinge of astrology to it. I'm like you, I am like just now diving into astrology because of human design. I've never really been into it before, so I'm learning about it, but it's a little overwhelming to me. Human design's not as overwhelming. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So human design you can make it a lot more simple. And I'll get into the types and all that kind of stuff later, but it's basically sort of your personality and a blueprint of your energy, of like who you are at a DNA level, like your soul, your core, without trying to be something for somebody else or people please or have a mask on or anything like that. Like really what your true energy is like. And your human design chart is a blueprint of that. Human design overall it has a lot to do with our DNA. And there are 64 gates in human design that correspond with parts of our DNA. And it's interesting because human design was founded in 1987, and I need to go look up exactly when the Human Genome Project started. But once all of that started, we started finding out more about our DNA. It actually lined up with the things that were downloaded spiritually about human design. So it's backed up by science, which is really interesting. And there's 64 gates in the DNA sequence and gates of human design. And the first one that's like the beginning strand starts, the sun goes through that gate on January 22nd each year. So that is technically the human design new year. There, there's different new years. We're at the Gregorian calendar new year when we think of January 1st, right? That's just the calendar that we create how many ever hundreds of years ago. With human design, that gate that it's going through on January 22nd is I think it's the 41st gate. And it's all about divine creativity. And it is the very, very beginning of the strand of DNA in all of us. So that it just marks the beginning spot. And it's interesting because if you think about it, and I think about the past New Year's that I've had, even before I knew about human design, it comes at a weird time, especially in the Northern Hemisphere. It's like right after the holidays. And yes, you want to like be healthier and maybe have a little bit more structure, but we're not quite like gung ho ready to manifest everything in our lives and set all the goals and whatever. We're still in a period of hibernation, right? It's just very like winter is meant for us to slow down and sort of reflect on the past year and all of that kind of stuff. And so those first few weeks of January are actually meant for you to a little bit reflect, slow down, continue to rest, and like get really intentional about the things you want to like let go of. Not quite yet starting new systems and starting new goals and intentions and resolutions. That comes more in, so Capricorn is like January. That comes more in Aquarius and even more so in Aries, like in March and April time, which is the big fire sign for manifesting. So that is why the Human Design New Year starts on January 22nd each year.
Wow, that's so interesting because I know even a lot of us, when we're talking about the new year and setting resolutions and intentions and doing all that stuff, I think we all have grand ideas that we're going to come out on January 1st and just go full fledged, go full steam ahead. And so many of us like, it trickles, like it takes a little bit of time to catch that steam. So that would make sense. Even I know I was just like, yes, I'm going to start this. I'm going to start 75 hard. I'm going to do all these things on the first. And now here I am. I literally did my first workout this morning doing it. And it's like, I could feel myself like easing into it a little bit more. And I'm just like, oh, why can't I get myself to start? So we're not like technically, like conditioned to start necessarily on the first. It's just some round number that we randomly picked out. And that makes sense with we're going off of the seasons. I've talked a lot about seasons and nature as a driving force of who we are as a person and how we can learn so many lessons from nature. And that winter, it may be perceived as a season of like death or dying, but it's really that planting season of rest and rejuvenation so that we can spring in the spring or in the summer and bloom full fledged. So that really, it's like this whole concept of nature guiding us is really, I think, fascinating, especially when you come from like a human perspective and a spiritual perspective and you kind of watch those seasons, how that can all work. So does that like have anything to do? Can you look at nature with human design or like, how is that all created with us?
Yeah, I don't think that necessarily has to do with human design as much as it has to do with the way the world is really supposed to work. We are supposed to operate as humans, as animals, as all the trees do and things in nature. We're supposed to operate a little bit more on a seasonal basis than a daily 24/7 schedule and having it be the same every day. And I'm just turned 40 and I'm just now starting to implement these things into my life. I was the person 6 years ago that was like, January 1st, going to do this, and had all my intentions, my word for the year and all that kind of stuff. And I think once you start to study human design, you actually start listening to your body a little bit more and you're not as much influenced by external sources and conditioning and all of that kind of stuff that wants you to just come out strong right out of the gate on January 1st.
Yeah. So how do we use human design to really start to understand ourselves versus the conditioning and everything that's put on us? I mean, that is why this podcast started, is like taking off our masks, trying to understand who we are on an authentic level. And that always carries a spiritual undertone and understanding who we are from with, our spirit and our soul. But I know human design is like a roadmap. And I always used to think astrology was that key to it. But I actually think human design explains it even more. I think there's just so much more detail. Now, this is my layman's knowledge of astrology. So I'm sure once you actually get into the nitty gritty of astrology, it explains a lot more. But then, I spent my whole life up until about 6 months ago thinking I was a Pisces, and I'm actually an Aries. So
that's so funny.
My whole knowledge of astrology has kind of been turned on its head. So after
I know.
It's
Same
crazy.
Same thing. So my sun sign is Sagittarius, but I didn't even know that your like moon sign and rising sign sometimes can be more important than your sun sign. And I'm a Pisces rising and an Aquarius moon. And it's fascinating. Human design is a little bit, so it can be much simpler when you're first starting, which I think is nice. And then you can make it real in-depth and complicated, not complicated, but like you can make it as in-depth as you want to. When you first get started, you'll do it's very similar to when you're looking up your astrological chart. You do have to know your birth date and time and the city and state that you were born in. The reason for that is because depending on where the sun is in like, I guess as far as like where you're born and when you take your first breath and when that DNA is activated by the oxygen that you breathe, there's certain activations that go on, and they're finding this out in biology and in science and all that kind of stuff. There's different activations that go on and turn on when you take your first breath when you're born. And depending on where the sun is in regards to all of the gates in human design, which is like, you can measure it all over the universe. There's a certain way they measure it. It shows different personality types that you will ease into, so long as people don't teach you how to be someone else, and different energetics that you'll have alone, and then how you interact with other people. So basically you'll put all that information in, and I can give you the links so that people can go get a free chart and all of that kind of stuff. And then they'll be taken to my cheat sheet. So my cheat sheet shows like, if you're this, start here and listen to this first so it doesn't overwhelm you. And then step 2, go here and you can listen to this. And it teaches you how to read your chart. Because when you print out your chart, whether you have it on your phone or you actually print it out on a printer, it looks like this person with like a lot of different shapes. And you're like, what am I looking at? I don't know. And different numbers and all that. And you're like, I don't know what I'm looking at. But the thing I'll tell you first is to look at the type. So there are 5 different types in human design. There's generators, which you and I, Courtney, are both pure generators. There's manifesting generators. There's manifestors, projectors, and reflectors. So this is like, honestly, if you know your human design type, which you'll easily be able to read it on your chart, you could use that information and work on yourself for about a year and uncover a whole lot of stuff, find a lot of relief, all of that kind of stuff. Whenever I do a chart reading for somebody, I mean, half the time people cry just out of relief of like being seen, being understood, and also being like, oh my God, I don't have to do this anymore. Like, I don't have to like do things in a way that doesn't feel good anymore. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So how did that resonate with you when you found out that you were a 3-5 sacral generator?
Well, I didn't know. I mean, I don't know all the other stuff, so I haven't read into all of it. I just looked at that's what I am. I have it written down right here. I'm a 3-5 sacral generator. And so I was kind of like, oh, I mean, I don't know what that means, honestly. But
okay, well, let's talk about it.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about it. But also, yeah, for sure. But also I want to, like, it's so interesting that you're saying that, like, that opens you up to like understand, like, this is me and this is being seen, because you're talking about that, like, this is going to be your map of like your energies or your personality if you're the big key that I heard was if you're not conditioned to be something else or taught to be something else.
Mm-hmm.
So how many
Mm-hmm.
of us are actually showing up as how we are in our human design versus how we're conditioned to be? Because I feel like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of us are showing up as how our conditioning is, not so much how we
Yep.
were born to be. So, I
Right.
mean, I think the majority of us would be in that space, right?
Correct. And if you were born in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, maybe early 2000s, you were very much conditioned to be a generator, like Courtney and I are. So generators, and I'll give just a little bit of information on them. These are sort of the workforce people. We love to work. The 8-hour workday was made for generators. Most of the population are generators or mani-gens, which is manifesting generators. They just have more throat chakra energy. We have the energy and life force to build, to create, to bring things to life. But here's the deal. The most important thing for generators and MGs, mani-gens, manifesting generators, is that they are doing work that is deeply satisfying to them. So that's so 70% of us have the generator energy. And that's what we're conditioned to be, is the like workhorses, work 8 to 5, all of that kind of stuff. But most humans are not doing work that lights them up.
Okay.
And because most generators and MGs aren't doing work that lights them up, the world is not okay. So it's sort of up to us to make sure that we're doing something that is so fulfilling to us. And if not, you need to switch jobs as soon as possible. For
So
the
what
world.
happens? Yeah. So that's what you're saying. The world's not okay. So what is happening because we're not being fulfilled or we're not working in our purpose?
Generators can get burnt out if they're not doing work that is very satisfying. I'm sure that you have had that experience in the past. Or work is satisfying for a little while and it's satisfying to your ego, but not necessarily to your soul, right? And then you find that out after a few years. Or decades or however long it takes you to figure that out. Or you can become depressed or resentful or bitter. There's like so many feelings that you can have as a generator. Also, like not having access to that joy and that creativity. It's almost like for a while, I just had a numbness of just like walking through life and being like, well, I'm good at working. I have the stamina and I'm just going to keep doing this for the money and for the benefits and for like stability. And this is just what it is. But once I found human design and started implementing the generator aspects and like actually saying no to anything that wasn't a 100% heck yes, and saying yes to everything that like I would feel full body energy about, everything started shifting. And at that point, I actually got kicked out of my then career because of COVID. And it was sort of like the universe was like, here you go, here's your chance. And I didn't know yet that human design was going to be my career. I just was sort of flailing for a little bit. And then finally, that was put in my lap. My podcast was put in my lap. And I was like, and since then, I've been incredibly fulfilled. And I don't know if you feel this way. I like never would have said this even a couple of years ago, even doing human design work. But like as a generator, I always was like, I want to work 8 hours a day. That feels so good. I just feel like I get more energy by working. It doesn't deplete me. It gives me more energy and it gives the people around me more energy. But now, and we'll talk about this in a little bit because the shift that humanity is having is one of more to projector energy and away from generator energy. And it's so weird because looking at 2024, I'm like, my goal is to work 3 or 4 hours a day, every day. And that's what feels fulfilling to me. And that's more of a projector vibe, which is really, really interesting. So it'll be interesting, Courtney, to see like what changes for you over the next few years. And if you step away from generator energy as far as the need to produce, the need to make sure you fill your whole schedule, even if it's something you love doing. We're switching from human doing to human being when 2027 hits.
That's interesting. I'm totally with you in the like workhorse. Like I like I can work from the minute I wake up to the minute I go to sleep, whether it's something I enjoy or not. Now, I get a lot of joy out of the creative process or learning or the growth process. So I feel like I have been in line with my career path, and everything I did in television, while might not have been fulfilling on a soul level, it fulfilled me in that creative level and gave me those skills I needed to do what I'm doing now, which is more passion. And so I see that. But recently, literally in the last, I would say 4 to 6 weeks, I have been like, you know what? I want the night off.
Yeah.
You know, where I'm like, I don't want to work all day and all night. And this is really new to me. I'm starting to feel that a little bit. And, you know, I know you have a young daughter. I have 2 very young kids. So I'm constantly like juggling kids and work and owning, you know, having my own business and creating. And so it's really easy to keep that schedule really full. But I've been fighting it lately. And it's not that I don't love what I'm doing, but I've been feeling that energy fight back lately. Yeah. So that's really fascinating.
And it's not like we don't need to swing all the way to the other side. Cause like, in December over the Christmas break, I had 2.5 weeks off where I didn't work at all. I mean, I would answer DMs or, you know, I put a podcast out or whatever, but I wasn't in my office. I wasn't working. And by day 10, I was starting to get a little bit depressed. Like it really is like low energy, sleeping 12 hours a night, not truly depressed, but just sort of like blah. And that's the thing, is that generators need to be tapped into what brings them joy. You can take some time off, but like, I don't, even when I go on vacation, it's like, it's not a workaholic thing. You get it when you stop being a workaholic and you start being a generator. There's a difference. So I love to take some time when I have time off to just take an hour to go to a coffee shop and do a few things. It's not a productivity thing. It's like I need energy. So this is how I get my energy.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely find that I have a hard time not doing something like to further a career, a passion. I mean, even when COVID hit, I had just had my daughter. So I was on I was just coming back from maternity leave. I went back onto my show that I was working on for a couple months. Started in January, COVID hit in March, and then got furloughed and also kicked out during that time because they gave my job to the girl who I had trained to cover for me on maternity leave because she was cheaper, and they used COVID as an excuse. So all of a sudden overnight, but it was like the universe was showing me that things need to change. And all of a sudden I was, like the stay-at-home mom, and I thought my whole life that's what I wanted to be. And I couldn't do it. I needed more. And that, I think, is that what you're saying. It makes sense as a generator. Like I needed to be doing something that was more fulfilling in that creative work space. Yep.
Totally. When was your daughter born? Mine was born September 2019.
So was mine. September 14th.
Oh, crazy. September 21st. Crazy. That's so funny.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. She came 3 weeks early. Literally, my husband proposed to me that morning. We were together. We wanted to get married before she came, but we didn't, we hadn't yet. And he proposed to me that morning. Oh, and so we were just going to go to the courthouse and then have like a celebration later. And then all of a sudden, so we went out to dinner that night to celebrate, getting engaged, and my water broke like at a movie. Like it was like a movie scene all over the restaurant. I was like, because I'm so swollen, my feet were like in flip flops, swishing out of the restaurant. It was and she was 3 weeks early. I had a scheduled C-section. She wasn't like, the universe was like, no, you cannot plan this. She was supposed to come like 3 weeks later. So that's funny though. So crazy. Right at the same time.
I want to look up after this. I want to look up her human design because it's interesting. Cool.
I know. Well, you talk about that, how human design and parenting like go so hand in hand together. Why? I mean, is it just so that we can understand our children better or our partners better, or is there like more to it than that?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I think when I first started studying human design, I had a little bit different view on this, and I had a newborn, so I wasn't quite a parent yet. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. She's 4 now. You're like your daughter, and I'm like, I still don't know what I'm doing, but here we go. So human design was made, part of its purpose was not to help us parent our children, but to help us reparent ourselves and to be better parents to our children. So honestly, sometimes, I just did a family human design reading yesterday, which was so fun. And they had like a 6-month-old and a 2-year-old. And we went over the girls, the kids' charts and all of that kind of stuff. But I'm like, honestly, you don't need to know their information. They'll become who they're supposed to be so long as you don't try to force them. So I don't love putting the kids in a box. Like my daughter is a reflector, which is super rare. It's like less than 1%. It's why I even started studying human design. But I don't put her in that box. Like she won't know about human design until she's like 7 or 8, because the first 7 years are really, really the formative years for kids. And you don't want to put them in any type of box. You just sort of want to let them unfold and become themselves. So she won't even, I'm sure she'll figure out that that's what I teach and whatever, but I'm not going to like talk to her about it until she comes to me or until after she's like 7 or 8 and we can talk about it then. The purpose of human design and parenting is for the parents to work on their self. So to unlearn everything they learned from 0 to 7 and beyond. A lot of the stuff 0 to 7 will be much more subconscious, but we teach you how to do that in human design too, by like getting into your body and going through the layers and all of that kind of stuff. But so much of it are things that you learned 7 to 14, 14 to 21. So there's aspects of different gates in human design were activated in different time periods. So like I did a reading for a lady the other day who her big thing was like figuring out from age 7 to 14 what happened in her life that she needs to go back and clean up and be like, this wasn't your fault. This happened for you. Like all of the different things. And doing that. And then also unlearning, like, we were taught, or I was taught at least growing up, it's like, you graduate high school, you get into a good college, you graduate college, you either go to get your master's or a law, like I was going to go get a law degree. Like you do this, you get married, you buy a house, you have 2.5 children, like all the things. Like there was just rules of what you're supposed to do. And this human design makes you question everything. It's like, well, do I need that to make me happy? Do I need that to make me happy? Do I need to do this just because my dad did it? Do I need to do this just because my mom did it? My dad is an attorney and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. And I love them both dearly, but it's like the opposite ends of the spectrum. Like my dad's a workaholic and my mom really should have found some kind of passion or career, and she wouldn't have had such a hard time being an empty nester because they're both generators. So there's like different things that you really need to unlearn from what you saw your caregivers do and what you want your children to see. Like with Caroline, we tell her, hey, I'm going to work today and I love going to work. And she's like, but mom, I want to hang out with you today. And I'm like, I know you do. And at some point, we're going to get to a point where you don't have to go to school all day. Like we're just not there yet financially. But at some point, I would love to have her just in part-time school. But I also say, I love work. Like I love going to work. I don't just go to work so we can pay the bills. I go because I have so much fun at it. And I want you, like we reward her for doing things that are fun to her and things that light her up and all that kind of stuff. So we never say like, mommy and daddy have to go to work. We say, we're going to work and it's so fun. And this is what I did today and like making it look fun and not a burden. So she can see her generator mom and projector dad, which he for the most part doesn't work that much anymore now that he's found out he's a generator or a projector. He only works a couple hours a day and then he does like the Mr. Mom stuff and takes her out for hikes and all of that kind of stuff. So she sees us living our design and it's not the same. And it's not the same as the people, her friends' parents. And she sees that you can sort of create your daily life how you want it to be instead of just how everybody else is doing it. So that's my tip for parents is like, dive into your chart and dive into your type, dive into your profile and your authority. Those are the 3 main things. So to give an example, Courtney is a 3-5. That's her profile. Sacral. That's her authority. Generator, that's her type. So find out your profile, your authority, and your type. And on my cheat sheet, I explain all of those, and just dive into that for 3 months or so. You'll become a better parent. You really, really will. So don't worry about, I mean, if you want to like look up your kids' charts, it's entertaining, it's fascinating, it's fun to watch them sort of have some of those personality traits, but don't put them in a box.
Yeah, I mean, anytime I've looked up the like astrology of my children or anything, it's like, it's crazy to see how they're so aligned with what those are. So I haven't done their human design chart, but like you said, like 3-5 sacral, like I'm not sure exactly what that is, but the generator thing is right on par with me. And it's like, when it comes to my children, they do the same thing. Harper's always like, Mommy, I want to hang out with you. I don't want you to work. I don't want, this constant, don't want you to work thing. And it's like, but I love it. Like, this is what I want to do. Like, I am not happy if I'm not doing this. And that's what I realized after going through the whole, this is what you should do. This is what we're supposed to do. I mean, I think we are a generation of people that were brought up that way. Yes, you go to college, you get your job, you get married, you have your kids. And, I met my husband later. I got married later. I had my kids later. So I felt like I was failing. Like, when I had a great career, but I felt like I was failing at life because I wasn't doing what we were supposed to do or what I should do. And then when I finally got it all, yes, it'd bring me joy and happiness and fulfillment completely, but it wasn't this, that's all I need. I still needed the passion and the work and the, to do that. So what happens to us then if we are going now into we're transitioning into the projector space? If we're a generator, like, how does that?
Yeah. One thing I would say is, so this shift that's going to be happening, it was prophesied that it was going to happen in 2027. So we still have some time. It's 2024. We have 3-ish years. So I would say don't stress too much about, I'll answer your question, but don't stress too much about figuring out how to vibe as a projector. More so, go into your type and start living your design now. And the life will take care of moving you to more of a human being instead of a human doing. So for those of y'all who don't know what I'm talking about when we say projectors are one of the types. They're about 20% of the population. They are not here to do the doing. They are here to see things from a higher perspective, be guides, teachers, advisors. They don't have consistent access to energy like those of us who are generators or mani-gens do. They get their energy from generators and mani-gens. So it's up to us. Like, my husband is a projector. He could sleep 12 hours a night and take a nap. And like, when he was working 10 hours a day on photo shoots, it was like the most bitter, resentful, angry, upset person ever. And health issues, exhaustion. Projectors are very sensitive. They do not have a motor. So like, they really they're the most efficient type. They can get 10 hours of work done in 3 hours. And that's really, they should only be working 2 or 3 hours a day. So that's projectors. And that is the vibe that we're stepping into. When the Industrial Revolution started, it was like the building of machinery, the building of things to make our lives easier. And we were worker bees that needed to go build those things, right? Yeah. Now we don't have that. We have AI, we have technology. We don't need to be working 8 hours a day. A lot of people too who work in corporate, like I experienced this working in an office, my first age 22 to 25, I got all my work done in like 4 hours. And then I would sit and like do filing or talk to people on AOL Instant Messenger. That's dating me. I'm 40 years old. Or, all of that kind of stuff. You get your stuff done usually, but it's crazy that they make us stay there 8 to 10 hours. So that 8 to 10 hour workday is gone. And the whole deal with when you were talking about there was a shift starting in 2020, I'm the one who, nobody said that in human design. I found human design, I think in 2018 and, played around with it, knew I was a generator, all that kind of stuff, but really started studying it in late 2019, early 2020, before COVID hit, and started putting these things into practice and whatever. And when I got kicked out of the music industry, when COVID hit, they were like, hey, we don't know when this is going to be back up and running, like whatever. I didn't really
Right.
get fired, but it was sort of up in the air. And I was like, well, I got to go. I have bills to pay and I have a
Yeah.
child now and I need to go figure this out. So I started my own business at that point, regardless of whether I was going to get hired back or not. And at that time, I was like, we were taught, I was in a human design class and they said it takes 7 years to decondition, which basically means unlearn everything you've learned your whole life. So unlearn the fact that you don't have to just do XYZ to be successful, that you sort of need to tap into what makes you happy and all the things we teach in human design. They said it takes 7 years. And I was like, I can really do this in like 7 weeks. Like I'm going to do all this work in 7 weeks. I'm like the high achiever, right?
Yes, I get
So
that.
I started like trying to do all of this stuff. And then COVID hit and they kept talking about how 2027 was the shift. And I was like, well, this is interesting. We're exactly 7 years before 2027. What is happening right now that is like the start of deconditioning and unlearning? And one of those things was everybody working from home and everybody basically being in charge of their own schedules and their own lives and being like, oh, well, this is a little bit, I mean, I know we didn't have freedom because we couldn't go do certain things, but as far as work, there was a much more freedom. And that
Yeah.
was the beginning of it. And I think it sort of shook us out of our mundane routine, like being on the hamster wheel. And we're like, hold on, could my life look like this? Do I really like my work? Do I like my job? Was I just going
Yes.
to this because? Do I like my family? Like a lot of people got divorced in 2020 and 2021, you know? Like, do I enjoy this partner that I've chosen for lifetime? All of these
Mm-hmm.
things started coming to the surface. And then I was like, wow, we're in the 7-year deconditioning period of humanity, of like our structures as they are, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of blowing my mind right now because that's when, once I realized I didn't have to be in Hollywood, then all of a sudden the doors open for me to move anywhere. My whole life
Mm-hmm.
I'd wanted to, explore and uproot and do something different. And I hadn't because I had a great job and I was doing what I was supposed to be doing and, playing all the roles. And it's just like, once that hit, I was like, I'm not stuck here. I can go
Mm-hmm.
anywhere. And that
Mm-hmm.
opened the doors. And that was the beginning of the change of me like moving away from everyone I knew. I don't know anyone in Tennessee.
Yeah.
I have friends now, but
Yeah.
we picked up and moved. And I was literally 5 minutes from my parents and my sister and my grandparents and my cousins. And, so that is a big change and a big change of way of life. And that 7 year, and it's been rocky. It's not been easy.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a 7 year period you're saying that shifts that we are going to go through this shift. So that's really fascinating how you're saying that. And I attribute a lot of the awakening and the shifting to COVID because that gave a lot of people time to
Mm-hmm.
get quiet and like really take a true look at their life. But it sounds like there's actually
Yeah.
more to it than that.
Yeah. This was something that, I mean, and you never know what it's going to be. Remember in 1990, the year 2000, they were like, all of our computers are going to stop working,
Yeah.
whatever. It's
Yeah.
not that kind of prophecy. It's not that kind of vibe. It's a little bit more gradual. And what's
Mm-hmm.
crazy is that you're seeing it. You're seeing it happen. You're seeing more people come online. You're seeing more people. Like I have a religious background. I'm a Christian. I'm the weirdest Christian you'll probably ever meet, but I'm a Christian, and like the people who the number of religious people that are booking human design readings with me is nuts. Like that is not the people that I thought that were going to
Right.
come my way, right? And it's
Yeah.
almost this idea of like, I know that there is something here and that there is that still small voice inside of me, but I don't agree with the things that my preacher is saying at church. Do you know what I mean? And like how
Yeah.
political things are getting and how like things are tied where it's like, oh, if you're religious, then you're this on the political spectrum. And if you're not, then you're this. And it's like all of these things are just true illusions. And I think people are starting to wake up to that.
Mm-hmm.
That we actually do have one truth and it's love. And that's all our souls really crave is love
Mm-hmm.
and fulfillment and expansion and evolution. And everything else is like pretend. It's just a game, you know?
I love that you're saying that, because literally I'm doing a series right now. It's a 100-day challenge, intentional challenge, and it's all on love, having discussions of love and coming back to the concept of love. And I had someone else who does human design, and the conversation was much different on that I spoke to on the podcast. And she said, when she kind of did a little bit of a reading, like I said, I don't know all the terms, but she said like more of like an intuitive reading for me. And she said that my focus and my purpose is about love, which I never understood. So I love that you said that, because that is, I think, that oneness. That's what we're all coming back to, is this whole concept of love. And it keeps being brought up. And I didn't even realize, as I'm going back to old episodes to do this challenge and pull the clips where we're just having this exploration of the topic, how much it is actually discussed, especially in the spiritual community, that we are all one. And what that means is that we are all the energy of love, and that unconditional love, and coming from the light of love. And so that's really amazing that you're saying that. And then on top of it, I mean, that's exactly the way I've always felt about religion, is that I believe in God. I believe in other things. I just wasn't brought up in it. And I think there's more to it than just, when you add that religion to it, you add that man-made element that, that skews it a little bit away sometimes, like you're saying, from what the true essence is. I think the messages are wonderful and the messages are there. But when you add that human element, sometimes it's like, no, you have to believe this, or the political, or you follow this doctrine, or this or that. It's like, let's take that away and just let's look at the real message of what we're talking about, is the oneness and the love. And so that's really fascinating that people are coming to you for that.
Yeah. Human design, it's really interesting so I took my certification course years ago. And parts of it, I feel like there's parts of it that it needs to be like a continuing education course, honestly. So I need to go back to it and be like, oh my gosh, because there was this one part of it where they talked about Kabbalah. Are you familiar with Kabbalah?
Well, I know what it is. I'm not familiar with the practice, but yes.
So it's like human design has a lot of different parts of it. Astrology is one, genetics and DNA is one. And then there's several other things, but Kabbalah is one. And I never dove into it when I was getting certified in human design. I was like, okay, I need to learn how to read a chart, and that's what I'm going to do. And you don't really need to know Kabbalah or the technology of Kabbalah to read a human design chart. So I was like, I just need to get it to where I can set it up for my business and start doing chart readings. And now I'm like, man, I wish I would have done that part of the human design class. My human design mentor, her name is Jenna Zoe. She's originally from London. I think she lives in Spain right now. She's so fun to follow on social media. She's amazing. She just had a podcast episode on her podcast with a Kabbalah teacher. I highly recommend everybody to go listen, because learning about Kabbalah at the same time as human design will make it much more potent and make it much more applicable to success in business, to success in your marriage, to success in parenting, like all of that kind of stuff. It's like adding a vitamin to it or something. Like, it's just really, really helpful. So anybody who's just starting their human design journey, I would say add Kabbalah to it as well. It'll be much more helpful. But Kabbalah it is like an ancient technology that encompasses all religions and lack of religion. Like, if you're agnostic or atheist, you can utilize it too. However, he talks about, he's like, most people end up believing in God. Like, if you're an atheist or something and you start Kabbalah, you'll actually end up believing in God, just because of the miracles of it and the way that it works. But I was like, man, like, I grew up Methodist, and I'm like, why were we not taught this in Sunday school? Because it was brought in from Abraham, like from the Old Testament, and it's like applicable to Islam, to Judaism, to Christianity, to all of the world religions. But I think only Jewish people, like Judaism, teaches it within their religious classes and everything. And I just wish that all religions would teach it, because it helps you. It helps you make a lot more sense of what's being taught in your text. religious text and to put it into today's life lessons. It's so good. So Kabbalah is a tenet of human design, and I highly recommend everybody to check into it as they start to dive into their human design too.
Wow, I've never heard that. And it's interesting that you brought up those different religions because it was my very first mentor quite a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago, maybe even more. She said something. She was Christian, but she said Judaism was the closest to what she was channeling, had the most accuracy towards getting to the stuff she was channeling from God, source, whatever you want to call it. So that's really interesting. But then, I've spoken with other people who, have Muslim families and this, all these different things. And it's like, to me, the foundation of it all is the same. It's just our different interpretations of it. And we're all like fighting and getting at it. And we're coming at it from different ways, but like the foundation of it is all rooted in the same thing. And I wish we could all just see that more. And I even talked to Rebecca Rosen about this a couple episodes ago. And I asked her what spirit was saying on the other side about things that were happening now. Cause we were talking about, everything that was going on in the Middle East and stuff like that. And then we started to get in a discussion a little bit about religion. And she said, Spirit says that it doesn't matter how you get to them. So that's what I thought that was interesting that you said about atheists. It doesn't matter how you get to them as long as you find your way, whether it's through religion, whether it's through the spiritual practices, whatever it is. That was the message she was getting. It's that channeling of that love, of that oneness. And it doesn't really matter which avenue takes you down that way, as long as you find your way towards it. So I think that's really interesting that, but Kabbalah is more of a tool, less of a religion, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's not a religion. It's almost like I'm trying to think of a tool. It's like a toolbox of everything you need to practice whatever belief system you have. Same with human design, honestly. People always are like, oh, you can't practice human design and be XYZ, like Christian or whatever. And I'm like, no, this has made me closer to God. This has made me a better follower of Christ's teachings. It has made me more in touch with that. But also there's a lot of human design coaches I know that are agnostic, and they just utilize it as a way to make life more enjoyable and better, and to evolve as human beings and to evolve their souls and everything. The people who've been using human design a really long time, I think definitely believe in a higher power, but some people don't. And so it's like food. Like you can take it in no matter what your beliefs are. We all need to take it in, and it can help you do better in life and throughout your day and give you more energy and all that kind of stuff. So human design and Kabbalah are both very much tools or technologies rather than belief systems, I guess. Yeah.
Well, I even know, I've spoken with therapists who use it to help treat their clients, because it sheds so much light on the person and the personality and why we are the way we are. And I think a lot of the time that's what we're all searching for, is trying to understand why we are the way we are and trying to understand who we are. And there's so many different things that we've learned, like you've said, from the age of 0 to 7, or even beyond that we've just absorbed, and we think that that's how we're supposed to be. And obviously it's not in our makeup. It's not in our physical DNA, which I think is also such a great tool when you can bring in that science with that spirituality. It's just, I feel like every single day science is proving this stuff is more and more real. So, I don't know how you deny it. Some people might argue it, but to me, it's just kind of like, it's proven.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's really interesting is that ever since I started teaching human design, I have never been the type of person who goes out and tries to spread the word to people who are not ready for it. Cause I think you a little bit need to be ready for it. Like, I have friends in real life who do not know their human design, and I don't talk to them about it and whatever. So I'm just sort of here putting out my podcast, having it be a resource. And then you come to me when you're ready to talk about it. But the deal is that and you've probably seen this, like more and more mainstream people are being like, oh my God, what's your human design? What's this? Da, da, da. And it's not just, I know it's a big thing in like LA and New York and in Europe and stuff, but you're finding it in Texas now, in Tennessee now, in Florida, like in the southern states, in the Bible Belt, and all over. And just like random people will be like, oh yeah, I'm a projector. I'm a 3/5 Manigen. I'm a blah, blah, blah. And it's like, what? You know this? Oh my gosh. So we will see over the next few years that it's going to become more and more mainstream, which is beautiful. This was the time that it was made for. It was first like downloaded in 1987, and we weren't really ready for it before then, honestly. Mm-hmm. And it grew very slowly in the first couple of decades, and now it's speeding up because evolutionary, like according to our human evolution and our DNA upgrades that we're having, more and more people are ready for it. So you'll hear, it'll be a household thing to talk about soon.
Why do you think the evolution is happening now? Like, what is it about this time? Because I've spoken a lot about it, about the ushering in of the divine feminine and like the changing, the expansion of consciousness and the amount of awakenings, and how it's so much more common to talk about spirituality or even our mental health and all that stuff right now. Like, what is it about this time that's like allowing us to have these conversations and expand more?
I think it's a culmination of a lot of things. I think that all of the steps we've taken in the last several thousand years have gotten us to a place where we're not most of us in the world, some still are, but most of us in the world, especially all of us in the United States, are not having to protect ourselves or like feed ourselves by working 12 hours a day. Right? We have a little bit of extra time and brain space to think about higher things, to think about spirituality. Our grandparents or great-grandparents didn't have time to think about these things. Like, they were doing chores, they were farming, they were working their butts off to feed all the kids. They didn't have time to think about these things. Honestly, they would show up for church for an hour on Sunday morning because they felt like that was their obligation or duty, but that's all. Like, it wasn't like it was sort of like, I'm going to do this to make sure I have a seat in heaven, rather than I'm going to do this to have a better life. We have the privilege to have extra time and space because of technology, because of the way that things have gone the last several decades, the last century, to have time to even think about these things. And I think that there's also a little bit of a tipping point going on with God, source, whoever, whatever creative energy that is in charge, where we're honestly like ruining Earth as humans. Yeah. And so it's sort of like, okay, I'm going to have to step in and help some people wake up and start talking about these things so that they will stop like killing the Earth and us like blow up and Earth no longer be what it is and have to take another millions of years to bring life to it again, right? So I think there's a cosmic consciousness that's like, okay, now's the time or else we're done here. So we got to go and do some DNA upgrades in these human beings and get them online and get them to start thinking about bigger things than money and consumption.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense because my mentor, Sonia Choquette, she's said to me multiple times that, the world is in peril. Like, this is imperative that we wake up now because the world is in peril. And I've had that, that talk. It's just like, what are we doing on a world scale and why are we waking up at this moment? So that would make sense that, we need to readjust and someone needs to intervene. Otherwise things aren't going to go well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think things are going to go well. I think that it's just going to be a real interesting next few years, because those of us who are quote unquote awake, and I say that not from a place of like, oh, I'm better than you. It's like, oh, I just went through a lot the past few years to have that sort of evolutionary upgrade. It's a lot, but those of us who have done that over the past few years and have up-leveled, we know that it was hard and that it was scary, and that there was not, we sort of realized that there's this illusion of control and like of how we think things actually are. And we're like, well, no, I lost my job and I did this and I became a parent and it's been crazy and blah. So we know that it's all sort of an illusion. And we know that it's going to be okay. But the other, I don't know how much, what percentage of the world it is, whether it's like 95% of the world is going to go through that in the next few years, and they're going to have a collective freak out. And it's up to us to keep talking about these things and to keep putting out resources so that when they hit their rock bottom or whatever it is, that like total freak out of like, what is my life and what are we doing here? They have places to come and plug into.
Yeah. Well, and I've also had this conversation about some people won't wake up because they're not supposed to. They're supposed to be here for that reason, because that is the role that they're playing in this lifetime, whether that's to project back onto us something that we need to learn or see, so not everyone is actually going to go through that wake up period. And some people that still need to, or not even need to, that are on the path to have that wake up or that awakening, it might not necessarily be as rock bottom or difficult because so many of us have gone through that to help pave the way and opened up the door to make it easier for the ones who are waking up afterwards to do so. So, I mean, it's really interesting to get all these different perspectives. I mean, like I said, this podcast tends to be I'm just fascinated by everyone I get to talk to because I'm bringing in all these different ideas and what everyone else is channeling and all these different expertise. I mean, it's almost like, my own little form of Kabbalah, bringing all these tools together to really understand what's going on, because there's a lot going on and you can feel it. And so I'm just really curious. And that's what most drew me to your work, is like, what is this, like this 7-year evolution? Like, where are we going and how does this look? Because I think you're the first person that really put it into that like timeline and saw it in that way. So it's so fascinating to me.
Yeah. And I don't actually know. These are just like feelings that I have. And some of it is like dreams that have come to me, or just things that have like started coming through, and I'll like write them out in my journal, and I'm like, this isn't me. I don't know. So nobody really knows what's going to happen. These are all just like guesses or feelings. But I really think that we're like, what are we exactly halfway through sort of right now? The 2020 to 2027. We're about halfway through. And I think we're going to sort of have a repeat. So 2020 and 2021 were like very polarizing. And then 2022 was very like everybody speaking their truth and figuring out what they were about. And then 2023 was very internal for a lot of people, like internal turmoil and like figuring out what you really want and all that kind of stuff. I think we're going to have a repeat. I think 2024 is going to be very polarizing. We have a election in the US. And then we're going to sort of go through the process again, but on a more potent and higher scale. Not that it's going to be worse or anything. I think it's just going to be a little bit more potent, and there's more awake people, which is going to be a positive. So that'll be interesting to see how that happens. But I think 2024 is going to be pretty polarizing. And then we're going to, and maybe some of 2025. And then I think 2025 is going to be a lot more like redoing structures. 2026 is going to be internal again. And then 2027 is going to be the start of the new paradigm, which it won't be all perfect then, but I think it's going to be the foundation for a new humanity and a new way of living.
Wow. I mean, I can't even imagine this year getting even more polarizing than it was a couple of years ago. I mean, between everything that happened, in 2020, it was just kind of like all of the stuff that was going on, from, riots to pandemics to, I mean, it was a very polarizing time. So that should be interesting to see how it plays out. But yeah, we're in an election year, so I don't doubt that the polarization is going to happen. And every day new news is being dropped, and new things are coming out. So who knows where it goes. And even like you were talking about with your daughter in school, it's like, I do think there's a change happening from this generator energy to what we want to do for our children, because I've had this conversation a lot with my husband, and the fact that like, you know, yes, I was like the straight A student and went to college and did all these things, but like, I've never thought college was a necessity for everyone. Everyone needs to find their own path. You don't have to go to college to be successful. And I think we were taught that. And now I'm even seeing with the school system, and like you were talking about the Industrial Revolution, the school system was created to create factory workers and things like that. So, I mean, I love this idea that you're looking at a school where your daughter goes a couple hours and learns other things, because to me, that is where what you're talking about is where we're shifting as a human race, is how to live, and that less so, a little bit less in that factory mentality, this generator mentality that we have. So I'm really curious to see how this all pans out, because I never thought I'd be the parent that said, I don't know if I want my daughter in like the traditional school system, but here I am. I know I'm not a homeschool parent. I know I don't have the patience for that, but I feel like there has to be a better way.
Right. I think that they are going to start more of the like co-ops and pods, because I am not a teacher of children. I can teach adults, but not children. So that homeschooling will never be a thing for me, but I would very much be interested in like a co-op or a pod or something like that, where several families get together and do that kind of thing. So I just want more time to like go on adventures and travel and live life.
Well, that is, I mean, some people that I follow and listen to, that's one of the biggest things they talk about is like, you know, so your kid misses 1 week of school, that experience for going on that trip is so much more valuable and things like that. So I think there's a happy medium to be found. We'll see what happens as we transition.
It's going to be fun to bookmark this episode and listen to it again end of 2024, 25, 26, 27, you know, to see what all has unfolded.
I know. How cool would that? I mean, even when you think about different, like going back to prophecies and things, I have this fascination going back to see what Nostradamus prophesized, because a lot of his things actually like, I mean, it's up to perception, but have like kind of come true. And like, how long ago was he alive? Like, and that stuff to me is like, makes me realize even more so than science, like the things that are written down in our history, when they actually come out and replay themselves, or we can prove that they happened, that just to me gives all the proof we ever need of spirit and soul, you know, our souls living on, and the channeled information that we can bring in. So like, if you're getting this stuff as channeled information, like, yeah, I want to bookmark this and see what happens in those times. Like, that's so cool, isn't it?
It will be cool. It's fun. Thank you so much for having me. I didn't mean to interrupt you right there, but this has been an honor, and it was such a good conversation. So juicy.
It was. Well, first of all, I just want to give you the opportunity. How do we work with you? How do we get a reading with you? Where do we find your podcast? I'm sure it's everywhere. I know it's everywhere because I've looked, but let's put it out there for everyone listening. And how do we learn? How do we learn about this stuff with you?
So go connect with me on Instagram if you're on there. If you're not on there, Courtney, I will get you a link to where people can go grab their chart and get their cheat sheet. And that's the best first place to go in. And then I'll send you a link for booking a human design chart reading. If you've already had a human design chart reading in the past, I also offer new paradigm sessions. So we can look at what your sort of purpose is for the next decade or so, according to your human design and your gene keys and all of that kind of stuff. We can go over a lot of the things that you might have already learned about your human design, but deeper as far as the time that we're in now. So those are my two main offerings right now for free. You can grab my cheat sheet and start diving into all of the resources that are on there. That's the best first place to start.
Wonderful. Well, I'll put all of those links in the show notes. And thank you so much. I loved getting to talk to you today.
Me too. Thank you so much, Courtney, for having me on the show.
And that's it for today's Intentional Living with Courtney Myers. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you, Allison Cullen, for joining me in such a fun conversation all about human design, the shifting energies and dynamics of the world, and what we think may or may not happen over the next couple of years. It'll be really fun to bookmark this episode and come back and listen to see what actually happened. If you want to work with Allison or get a human design reading, or even just follow along, I'll put all the information of how to get in touch with her in the show notes below. And as always, you'll find Intentional Living with Courtney Myers and Intentional Media on our website at CourtneyMyers.com. That's where you'll find our books, our courses, and everything else we have going on. I can't wait to talk to you soon. Bye.